Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me for this program designed to look at our town government, how it works, and the people involved in this operation. I am Dan Armin. Welcome to I Want to Know. And let me extend a warm welcome to North Branford's new police chief, Kevin Halloran. How are you?
Hi, Dan.
Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Why don't you start by telling us about you, where you grew up, your education?
Sure. I grew up in North Branford, actually the same street that you live on.
That's amazing.
Isn't it?
It was a little bit different back then, though.
It was the 1970s.
Somethings.
Somethings, yeah, exactly.
We'll let it be.
We'll let that go for now.
Okay.
But yeah, I graduated North Branford High School in 1980-something.
Okay.
82, actually. From there, I went to electronics. I was in the computer field for about 4 or 5 years. Ended up moving to Pittsburgh, worked there for a couple of years, and came back to Connecticut. Moved back into my parents' house, and the funny thing was, on Sunday mornings, my father would circle job opportunities for me to
If that wasn't a hint.
yeah, it's, get out of the house.
They said he's back.
Exactly. So, I did a bunch of job applications. My father worked at the post office, and he wanted me to apply at the post office.
Sure.
And I really didn't want to work where my father worked, so I took the civil service exam, and I kind of just filled in the bubbles, and obviously I didn't get the job. So then he came across with these job applications for police officer. And my father was actually a supernumerary here in North Branford before there was a full-time police department.
So what is a supernumerary?
Part-time police officer. This is before they had a established police department.
Oh, all right.
So it was the state police oversaw.
Okay.
It was
like Killingworth, I guess they have like a resident officer. Or something
resident
like
state
that.
trooper,
Okay.
and then they hire part-time police officers. So he was doing both at the time. He was working at the post office and working part-time as a police officer here in North Branford. So when they became a full-time police department in North Branford, I think it was in the early 70s, maybe 74 or so, he was making more money at the post office, so he decided to go that route.
Okay.
So anyways, getting back to the job applications,
Yeah, sure.
So he was circling cop jobs, and at that point in time, I had really no interest of even being a police officer, but I seized the opportunity that, hey, you know what, this if I take this job, it's a residential police academy, so I could live at the police academy for 5 days a week and then come home on the weekends. And,
So that everybody could have a break from each other.
Exactly, and make a couple bucks,
Right.
while I was doing it. And lo and behold, at that point in time, I was hired by Branford. They called me up, offered me the job. I accepted. I was also in the running for New Haven Police Department, and the day after, New Haven called me up, offered me a job, and I said, well, I already accepted Branford. So my education, like I said, when I got out of high school, my interest was in the computer field, so I went to Connecticut School of Electronics.
In New Haven.
In New Haven,
okay.
Yep. It used to be on the boulevard in New Haven. So when I became a police officer, life started happening. A couple of years on, I ended up getting married, having kids.
Right.
And, so I really had no college education per se. The Connecticut School of Electronics wasn't an accredited college.
It was like a tech
school.
Tech school, right.
Exactly. So as I was moving along in time, one of my bosses said to me, you know what, you need to go back to school because if you want to look to get promoted, you're going to start to need some degrees.
Accreditation, right.
Yeah, so I went back to school. I went to Charter Oak State College. It was an online school for public safety administration.
Wow.
And it seemed that just about every time I got a degree, I was promoted. So it was I called it just-in-time learning.
Yeah, nice.
So it was pretty cool. And after that, I ended up getting my master's degree at Tiffin University out of Ohio.
In criminal justice?
Criminal Justice Administration.
Okay.
Yes, and my undergrad is in Public Safety Administration.
Okay.
So that's about me. That's my education.
Can you explain what a police? Well, so then you went up through the ranks in Brantford.
Yep.
What capacities did you serve in before you became chief of Brantford? Oh, you were a patrol officer initially, correct?
Yep, I was a patrol officer. I did a little bit of everything.
Okay.
So I was a patrol officer for quite a few years. The first time I took the sergeant's test, I should backtrack a little bit. I hadn't gone to college, and I took the sergeant's test, and the first time I didn't make it.
Okay.
I want to say I failed miserably.
Okay. Well, you didn't make it. Whatever.
So anyways. I became sergeant. I then became in charge of our training division.
Okay.
I had a lot of different opportunities in Brantford. I started our first field training and evaluation program. I was on our SWAT team for a little while. I then moved into what we called management information systems. So they took advantage of my
your technical background.
My technical background, yeah. So. When we started to implement computers in policing, they kind of drew on me. So
sure.
At that point in time, I was doing that work, and I rose to the ranks. I became a lieutenant in charge of it. I was the commander of the patrol division. From there, I got promoted to captain. I was captain for a couple of years, and the opportunity for me to apply for chief of police came along, and I skipped over the position of deputy chief and made captain. Oh boy, about 11. I mean chief.
Right.
Made chief about 11 years ago, 12 years ago.
Okay. What does a chief do?
Well, if you were to ask my father if he was still alive, he said, you can't possibly do less than you do now. But
it depends on who you ask.
Exactly, but it's there's, you know.
It's a good thing I'm not asking your father.
Exactly, good thing he's not sitting here.
Right.
But, so the chief, the responsibilities of the chief is pretty huge. Think about it. You're in charge of a police force. You're the oversight of the police force. You're responsible to the citizens of the town. Mm-hmm. Here in North Brantford, we're about 15,000 people. So it's the general oversight of the police department. I'm in charge of the budget. I manage the budget. I manage the patrol investigations, the detective investigations.
Wow.
Oversee communications. If there's any grants or anything like that's going to be applied for, general oversight of the entire department, as well as dealing with civilian complaints against police
you're the
officers.
liaison between the public.
And the community, absolutely.
Yeah.
Getting out to the public and doing things like this,
right.
Getting out to community events. I haven't had much time to do that yet. I'm only about a month into this,
okay.
So we're just getting our feet wet and trying to learn the ins and outs of the police department and the political setting and
the dynamic,
exactly.
Which is different. I mean, Brantford's structure is a lot different than our structure.
Oh, it certainly is, yeah.
And Brantford's, so during your time in Brantford, I mean, that was a really small department compared to what it is today. You've seen a lot of changes in policing over time. Technology being just one of the changes.
Technology
correct?
Is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. I remember as a patrolman, we didn't have cell phones. We would drive up to the pay phones in the park. Yeah, drive up to the pay phones and
you didn't have radios in the cars at all?
We did. No,
but in order to make a private call, though, you had to get out of the vehicle and.
Or if a citizen called in for you,
I see.
You would drive up to the payphone
and then call them back.
Right, and tell the dispatcher, call me at.
I see.
488 whatever, and the dispatcher would connect you and with the person that was calling in.
That's a big change from today.
Yeah, a lot of change. Like I said, now everybody has a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
Cell phones have had a huge impact on policing. Nowadays, there are many computers, and everybody has a camera on their phones.
Right, cameras has had a big impact
huge
on what
impact.
you do.
Computers.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started, we were joking about this a little bit earlier, dating myself, but we would handwrite reports.
Right.
Now everything is computerized. We started a a program back in Brantford, not me, but where the officers would actually dictate their reports, and a typist would type the report.
Because nobody could read the handwriting, I'm sure.
Oh, the handwriting was horrible.
Like, plus you're in a squad car doing a report with handwriting. I cannot imagine.
Then it's raining out, and all the think is
right.
Yeah, so.
The coffee gets spilled all over the
Coffee
place.
gets spilled on it, and the donut.
That's
you know,
horrible. That's horrible.
Exactly.
All right, we let it go now.
We had to go there, right? We had to go there. So.
I promise I will not dredge that up.
Just a lot of changes. I mean, some of the technologies that we have in our vehicles now, the computers in the cars,
Cameras.
right. Body cameras, the GPS on the cars, license plate readers,
Right.
tasers.
That's how I found out that my registration had expired, by the way.
You got pulled over by an officer with the...
In Brantford.
In Brantford with
They
the
were
license
wonderful,
plate
though.
reader.
They just said, get it taken care of.
Oh, okay.
Or we'll tow your car.
Well, there you go.
Fair.
It's fair.
They didn't.
Okay.
But yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so
Yeah, the technology has changed tremendously, and it's actually helped us do our job. It's helped us augment what we do.
and response times, I'm sure, with people having phones on them at all times, you know exactly what's going on. There's less of a lag time, I would imagine.
Well, not a lot of and a lot of departments don't do what we did in Brantford, and I'm going to try to bring some of that stuff here to North Brantford. We have all these computers, and we're great at collecting data, but we're not using the data, okay? You wouldn't go to a Southwest Airlines where they're not doing analysis on how to move people on and off planes a lot quicker. I use data to direct our resources, developing hotspot maps where the problematic areas are.
And peak times in certain
Peak
areas.
times, exactly. So, for example, one of the things that I just did recently in North Brantford for our officers to focus on is traffic crashes. I've noticed that there's a pretty large amount of traffic crashes in North Brantford. Speeding, distracted driving,
right.
The cell phones, the texting, and there's certain areas where we're having the problems, and we're going to start to do enforcement in those areas, looking out for the problem. So if we reduce traffic crashes, okay, it makes it safer for the folks in North Brantford to drive through the town. Think about it. Having a family, having kids.
Sure.
You want the roads to be safer, and you want lower occurrences of traffic crashes. That's one of the biggest complaints that small towns get is speeders, speeders and traffic issues. So we're going to start to focus on that, and then we're going to start to move to focusing on the crimes and plotting the crimes, and it's almost a hybrid of the New York City Bill Bratton CompStat. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's putting cops on dots.
But it's right, it's targeted areas.
Exactly,
as you're saying,
exactly. And with the resources that we have to use them smart. Okay, we want to work smarter, not harder. So those are some of the things that I'm going to.
And a problem that we do have in town is property crimes, like vehicle break-ins, stolen property.
Yep.
So you're saying you can take the data, the history, you could probably trend where it's happening and when, and probably focus on that.
We could. However, what we've seen is what I've seen. I actually did a study with the surrounding towns from Brantford about a year ago, and it was a 2-month study. And I found that there was, I want to say, over 100 cars stolen in
the region.
In the region,
yeah.
Right. So if you figure a car's worth, average car's worth
$35,000.
Well, I even shot low. Let's say $15,000 times 100 cars. That's $1.5 million worth of cars being stolen.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is we need to lock our cars. Okay, don't leave our valuables in them.
Right.
But what we did see is that it's very random. It's typically youth doing this. They're getting in cars. They're going into neighborhoods, and these are crimes of opportunity. So what they're doing is they're opening up the car doors to see if they're locked, and if you have anything in your car, they're going to steal it. They steal it, and if you leave your car's keys in the car, they're going for a joyride.
Or proximity fobs. You know, people have their fob in their house, but if it's within a certain,
Range.
I read about that, like Mercedes-Benz, you know, if it's in a certain range, then they could be able to start the car.
Right, right.
So, okay, so people need to be aware of that too.
Absolutely.
So, do you have a policing philosophy you could describe in a way for the people? I don't know. That's a really vague question.
Well, yeah.
But one of them would be data analysis.
Data-driven
Data-driven
approaches.
policing, yeah.
Data-driven approaches. But you know, policing really hasn't changed in 100 years. We have these technologies to augment what we do. Okay, but the basic concept hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when I started, I changed the mission of the police department. You know, the mission is to reduce crime, reduce the fear of crime, and increase the quality of life for the people in North Branford, okay? And it's that simple,
Yeah.
okay? Reduce crime, how do we do that? We prevent crime, okay? So we use the data to get into the right places at the right time. And quite possibly just the mere presence of an officer could reduce crime. Example, so what I found in Branford when I did some studies, there was a correlation between traffic crashes, high traffic areas, which were our commercial areas.
I see, yeah.
Okay, so if I assigned that officer to that certain area to handle traffic crashes and do traffic enforcement, it had what's called a diffusion of benefits. A diffusion of benefits is an unintended benefit. By doing one thing, you have an impact on something else. So if we have our police officers in the commercial areas during high times of shoplifting, let's say, okay, the bad guy will come around and will say, hey, there's a cop right there. Maybe I should go to the next town or go somewhere else. But displacement doesn't really happen that often from the studies that we see.
So they just give up and don't do something. They don't necessarily move a block away.
Not necessarily, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly, exactly. So we use, like I said, the mission hasn't changed. You know, basically, the idea is to prevent crimes before they occur, but that's hard to measure. You know? And you start to see it when your Part 1 crimes come down and your quality of life crimes go down also.
And then people, when you have a presence, then people, you know, feel safer too.
Therefore, you're reducing the fear of crime.
Right. So then there's your quality of life aspect.
There's your quality of life aspect.
During your time in your career so far, what do you think have been like policing's successes versus areas that they need to work on then?
Generally?
Yeah,
or
generally speaking.
Generally? So the successes are those people that are using technology to augment what we do. The failures, if you will, is the old style of policing. It's called random patrol. Okay, so you know, a couple interviews with officers. You ask them, well, you know, what's your plan for today? What are you going to do?
Just drive around.
We're going to drive around and wait to see something happen, and you know, we'll catch the bad guy. Well, you know, when I was a young patrolman, if somebody told me when and where the crimes were occurring, you would, you know, you'd jump on it. You'd go there and you take care of it, because that's what cops want to do. They want to prevent crime from occurring. And you know, 99.99% of the times I have found cops are doing the right thing. But if they're not directed, if they don't know, and that's why education is so important for officers, because what happens is if you get mired in the traditional way of doing things within the four corners of the town of North Branford, let's say, you don't know any different, okay? So that's why I'm a huge proponent of training and thinking on a more global aspect. And you might say, well, you know what, this is only North Branford, okay? But it works in small towns too.
Right.
So it's pretty interesting stuff. It's not 100% accurate.
But nothing is.
Nothing is. But it's better than just driving around aimlessly.
Right. When you're not necessarily effective.
So when you think about it, random patrol produces random results. Directed patrol produces directed results. So that's
targeted results.
Exactly.
That's fantastic.
You know,
yeah, it's fascinating stuff, actually. So now you're in North Branford.
Now I'm back in North Branford.
Back in North Branford, so welcome back.
Thank you.
What is your priority list for the town? I mean, I understand you've only been here, a couple of weeks really, working constantly. Are you developing a priority list and things that you really want to see happen right away? Versus, what would you like to accomplish short term versus long term?
We've already accomplished a couple things.
Okay.
We're able to order car cameras for the cars.
Okay.
Get those in the cars. It's twofold. It's not only an accountability tool. The people in the community are looking for transparency.
Right.
Okay, and that's the big thing now. I mean, in Branford, we put body cameras on officers in 2008 before all these issues.
More than 10 years ago.
Yeah, before these issues started happening, way before Ferguson, way before
Right.
Baltimore, way before New York City with Eric Garner.
Right.
And what I have found is that, and like I said, the majority of the time, a good 95% of the time, the officers are doing the right thing, okay? It's a lot of times it's perception of the people with the interactions of how they think they're being treated. I'll never forget the first day that we put car cameras in, I'm sorry, it was the body cameras.
In Branford.
In Branford. We started it as a pilot, pilot program. The reason why we use them, we heard about a city in California that was using them, but we found out that they were a lot less expensive than the in-car cameras.
Oh, I see.
So we tried it as a pilot, and we got away without buying an in-car camera, and we bought the body
cameras, which covered wherever the officer was when they were on, yeah.
But it was interesting because one of our officers stopped the car for person was talking on the cell phone, and subsequently he came in and filed a complaint saying that the officer was rude and so on and so forth. So I said, "Oh boy, hold on, let me go look at the tape." Almost like Warner Wolf. Let's go look at the tape. And it was the exact opposite.
Sure.
So I came back to the person. I said, "Do you understand that this whole interaction was recorded?" And he looked at me. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, our officers are equipped with body cameras." And I said, "Do me a favor. Before you put pen to paper, how about come back and look at the video on this and tell me if you want to continue with the complaint." Well, he turned around and walked out and said, "Thanks, have a nice day."
I imagine,
so,
right.
Yeah.
So it protects everybody. It protects the officers, and it protects the citizens too.
Absolutely.
And there is that level of transparency and accountability.
Absolutely.
Which everybody wants.
And it's also an insurance policy to the town.
Sure. Sure.
When things, I'm not saying that cops are right all the time, because they're not. And but for example, we've had car crashes, okay, and the person said, "Hey, the police officer went through the red light." Well, it's recording all the time, and when the crash, it goes back a certain amount of time. So we were able to determine that, no, the officer didn't go through the red light, you went through the red light.
Right.
It's the deep pockets things. So some of the things that I want to do besides that, I want to get into, my goal is I think that a highly trained police officer is much better. So why is that? They're going to make better decisions, okay? And it's a little bit selfish for me because the better decisions that the officers make and the better job that they do, the better interactions that they have with the community, the better I look.
Right.
So one of my goals is to boost up the training, because the training has been sparse, and they've been meeting the state requirements, but
that's minimal, though, is what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
So in my long-term goal over the period of years is, I'm retired once, so I'm not gonna be here for many years, but my goal is to develop a succession plan to bring up the next leaders of the North Branford Police Department and get them highly trained so that they're able to just take over.
Fantastic, and then, it becomes a mutual respect thing as well. It emboldens the mutual respect between the community and the officers in town.
Oh, absolutely.
When you have that, so that, training is always a good thing. No matter what we're doing, it's always a good thing. We're running out of time. There's a lot to cover, and a lot I'm fascinated with.
So you have to ask me back again. Then.
So I will have to. I would love to.
Okay.
One question I did have is, do you have any favorite police shows that you want? Like, I love Blue Bloods.
So do I. Yeah.
How realistic are they, and do you think they kind of accurately reflect the life, or not so much? What should the public know, I guess, is kind of what I'm going for.
It depends upon what show.
What show it is, sure.
You know, if you're looking at what's that, Reno 911.
Yeah, okay.
Or those
not realistic.
Not realistic, or those silly cop shows from the 80s. Those were horrible. I mean,
but you like Blue Bloods, though.
I do like Blue Bloods, and a lot of the things that they
wrestle with.
Yeah, and there's a lot of contemporary issues
right.
that they deal with on Blue Bloods, and I think they do a great job of portraying it. Of course, they solve the crimes in an hour and everything's done, but that's not real life. And but they do tackle a lot of contemporary issues.
Right, and the debates around those issues.
Absolutely.
Okay. During your career, can you think of a situation that left you most proud, like a situation that comes to mind where you say, you know, I really feel good about how I handled that? I mean, you know, that stands out.
So, yeah, actually, when I was a young officer, when I first started, we were first responders, like in North Branford.
Right.
So the officers would go to medicals. We had just been relieved of that duty several months because the Branford Fire Department became the first responder, and police didn't have to respond to medical calls anymore. So I was listening to the radio and I was scanning the fire department, and I heard them having difficulty trying to find a house in a condominium complex.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And I'm listening, and the call was an infant that was choking.
In distress, yeah.
In distress, yeah. So I'm listening. Now I'm getting in distress, and I'm like, boy, these guys aren't going to find this place. So I go there, and I knock on the door, and the woman was holding an infant, and the child was blue.
Oh.
So he had something lodged in his throat. So I did the Heimlich to him, and unlodged whatever it was, and the assistant fire chief at the time came out, and he says, you know what, that kid would have died if you didn't show up, if you didn't go, and I didn't have to go.
Right.
So
that's a proud moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I became really good friends with the family.
Fantastic.
So.
I bet. Imagine.
Yeah.
So we're out of time. You know, okay. As just one of the citizens that you serve and protect, I would like to tell you how much I value what you do and appreciate what you do. And you know, North Branford, I'm sure, is thrilled to have you. It's a new generation of policing, and you're going to be here to oversee it. And I'm really happy that you are.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
All right, Dan. Thanks.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
So thank you for joining us. We got to go, but any suggestions or ideas, please email me at danarminnb@gmail.com, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.